The incidence of twin pregnancies is said to be about 1 in 80 pregnancies. Twin pregnancies will always comprise a group of twin pregnancies where the babies are identical and a group where they are non-identical. We're seeing more twin pregnancies in the UK now because of so many more couples seeking assisted conception when they're not falling pregnant naturally. And one of the mainstays of assisted conception is to make women who are either not ovulating every month or releasing 1 egg per month release more eggs, so there's a greater chance of them being fertilised. But if a woman's releasing more eggs each month, then there's a greater chance that she will conceive more than 1 baby.
So what's it like when you find out you're not having 1, but 2 babies?
Coming up to the scan at 12 weeks, I'd bought a dress. A couple of weeks before it had needed to be adjusted anyway, so I thought I'll put it on so I can check that I'm still sort of can fit. And it was a little bit too tight around the waist, and I was thinking, oh, I know I'm pregnant, but I didn't think I'd put weight on just yet. You don't generally tend to show that early. Once we'd had the scan, they said, well, here's 1, yeah, that's fine, there's the other, and we were like, what other?
My partner Neil nearly fell off his chair, and basically I giggled for about a month afterwards, just a nervous giggle of how am I going to cope. Afterwards, when I did find out I was having to, and contacted my mum, she then informed me there was twins on my dad's side and her side, and then we found out there's twins on Neil's side as well, so I think it was just inevitable.
When they first saw the twins, they said then that they weren't identical because they had the 2 placentas. They could see the 2 separate sacs. If they were identical, they share the sac.
Identical babies start out from 1 egg, which is fertilised by 1 sperm, and then they split, and this is why they are identical. Non-identical pregnancies start with more than 1 egg being released. Each egg is fertilised, and they are as different as brothers and sisters are different to each other.
Once we'd had the scan, and I started reading about twins, it says that, one of the signs of having twins is that you show a little bit earlier. My legs were swelling up, my arms were swelling, my fingers. It was just overnight. I was getting up at 5 in the morning because I just couldn't sleep. So it did get a bit bad in the end.
Most of the complications that we see medically are in the women who are carrying identical twins. And for most women who are carrying non-identical twins, the chance of a fairly uncomplicated pregnancy is quite high.
I had the best pregnancy you can imagine, perfectly healthy, no sickness, nothing at all, no cravings. Had about 1 or 2 mood swings like you do. Apart from that, totally healthy, no problems at all.
The standard recommendation for twins when it comes to delivery is if the first twin is coming head first, then we would normally be fairly relaxed about that woman having a normal birth, a vaginal birth.
Beth, who they always called twin 1 because she was 1 lower down, so she would be the one who would be born first naturally. She was in breech position, so they booked me in for an elective caesarean, and I was quite relieved in a way because, having a natural labour is probably quite daunting anyway, and having to go through it twice, I was thinking, although I sort of psyched myself up for it.
Genevieve's twins were in a good position for a natural birth.
I was going to go natural, if I could, and I went in 2 weeks early because obviously they don't need to go full-term with twins. They tried to induce me for 3 days, which was horrible, I must admit. And then they just said, we're going to have to give you emergency caesarean, because the more they were trying to induce me, the further these 2 were pushing themselves further away, almost like they knew it wasn't their time to come out.
On the Friday before I was due to have the caesarean, my waters started breaking. So we went up to the hospital, and then they said I had pre-eclampsia. They took my blood pressure. So they said, we'll put you in for emergency caesarean. And so I had them that evening.
Heather delivered 6 pound 9 ounces Beth and 6 pound 8 ounces Georgina.
At the end of the day, at least we knew when they naturally, were going to come and make their entrance into the world.
Samuel and Emmy are now 6 months old, and Genevieve manages very well with them. How did she feel at first?
When I found out I was pregnant, the initial how am I going to cope was really was overtaking everything else. Because I haven't got anything else to refer it to. This is my first pregnancy and we had twins. But after a while it just all sinks in, you start thinking logically, and that's it. At the end of the day, you know, you've got no choice, you've got to cope with what you're given.
It's funny how you get stopped a lot in the street, you know, because you've got twins. And people always say, well, how do you cope? And I always think it's quite a silly question, really, because you haven't got a choice.
One thing I would say to people if you're having twins is just there's nothing wrong with a crying baby, because at the end of the day, you've only got these and there's two of them, and one of them's going to have to wait.
The hardest thing I think I've had to learn is not to feel guilty when you're having to deal with one and the other one is crying. I found that really hard to begin with, and even now sometimes, you know, it just gets to you a bit. You know, you think, oh, if I only had one, I'd be able to sit there and comfort them. But they have been very good babies. They do seem to understand that you're doing something for somebody else.
You can tell after a while who's just whinging and who's in pain. You know, you can tell by the cry. I tend to go to the one that seems to need my attention a bit more, not the one that's whining, you know, but you just got to get on with it. It's hard to say, you know, you have to be in that situation, you just got to sort of get on with it.
Yeah.
If I say if they both have to cry, they both have to cry.
When you look at a lot of the activities that you can do with babies, some of them are very expensive, and when you've got two of them, it gets a little bit unrealistic.
But Heather found her local baby signing class was one activity she could do fairly easily with two babies.
With the signing class, they say it's a family, it's a one price per family, so that was really, really good. With things like baby swimming, which I've looked into, they can charge around £85 a course, and that's per baby. So that's a little bit too much for me for two of them.
But it's not all double the trouble. There are some lovely positives to having two babies at a time as well.
There's always one to give you a cuddle. Like Neil says, if we had just the one, you'd be fighting, especially when he gets home from work, you know, who's going to give him a cuddle, put him to bed, blah, blah, blah. There's always one for both of us. There's always one for both of us to have a cuddle with. Them entertaining each other now. They're getting to that age now where they're starting to be aware of each other and entertaining each other.
Is that your sister? Yeah. Well, I think from their point of view, as they've got older, it's better for them because they've got someone else who's in the same position as them. And that when they're having baths and things like that, they see each other and, you know, it's like, oh, I'm not the only one who's totally helpless or having to do this.
There are also twins and multiples clubs to give moral support and practical advice. And Genevieve's top tip for twins is...
if you're not an organised person, try and become an organised person. I'd say that's you. Basically, you have to be. Always have to be that one step ahead, thinking, what am I going to do later on today? Make sure bottles are steamed and bottles are, you know, made. Always try and be that, you know, make yourself organised, definitely. Because there's nothing worse when you get home, you've got two screaming kids who are hungry, bottles are not made, bottles are not washed. You know, get yourself really organised with twins.